Greetings, YouTube. This is Remarkable Republican here once again to bring you the truth with a truth-flavored bias. I know many people who own male dogs, and while all of them intend well, almost all of them bungle. They, I guess you could say, screw the pooch because they simply don't know how to properly raise a dog. So today what I'd like to do is to show you how to properly raise a male dog. And a lot of it begins in puppyhood. If you really want a dog to grow up to be a mature, healthy, and productive member of your household and of society, you need to avoid neutering your dog and instead opt for circumcision. I'm going to offer compelling moral, health, hygienic, and aesthetic reasons why this is in fact the case. So let us begin. It really should not be a choice for an owner to neuter a dog. This is something that is deeply immoral, it violates the dog's rights, and it prevents the dog from really being what it is supposed to be by nature. It's a kind of modification that is highly unnatural and cruel. When you neuter a dog, you're removing an important part of his anatomy. And this part of his anatomy is not only vital to his health and his identity, but also his ability to be a functional, productive member of society. In fact, neutering a dog is probably worse than declawing a cat. When you declaw a cat, you might compromise their agility and balance. When you remove a dog's testicles and neuter it, you are removing that dog's identity, and you're harming it both physically in terms of hormones, and you're harming it psychologically. Because in fact, a neutered male dog now becomes a eunuch. It is without a firm gender. And that in itself is a form of being transgender. And we know for a fact that transgenderism leads to depression in people, and dogs are quite a bit like people. So there's no reason to think that a dog would be anywhere nearly as happy neutered as it would be as nature intended. And this would lead to a side discussion, if we had time, about how transgenderism was first normalized by the commie queer agenda through the vet's office by enforcing neutering with Bob Barker and all these other people. But we're going to leave that aside for now and stick with how to properly raise a male dog. The ironically named Humane Society offers up the solution of neutering for a dog, which of course is quite inhumane. A more humane alternative is circumcision. And the reason why circumcision is a better solution is quite simple. Circumcision does not impede a dog's function. It is something that will not harm the dog in any way. And we also have to think about something else. Not only does a dog have about 10 years on this earth to live, but we can actually give it a chance at achieving immortality. Dogs are man's best friend after all, and there have been many people throughout time who have fantasized about dogs joining us in the hereafter, as witnessed by children's movies such as All Dogs Go to Heaven. Through circumcision, we can allow our dogs to share in the covenant that we enjoy with God. And by showing their own devotion to God with their circumcision, this is one way that dogs can participate and have a much better chance of being allowed into heaven one day. So not only does this not harm them here, it will potentially give them an eternity during which they can remain our best friends and companions. In a moment, I'll circle back to provide theological proof of what I've just said, namely that circumcision can allow a dog to share in the covenant. But for now, let's talk about how there are practical benefits of having your dog circumcised, and these are things that owners can actually benefit from in the here and now. So for starters, a circumcised dog is far less likely to have penile leakage. And this is because a dog will now be able to groom itself much better. So normally a dog has to deal with a flap of skin that's unnecessary that can potentially hold in liquid and get infected. But now, because everything will be better exposed, the dog is much more able to provide cleaning to all of his parts, and therefore leakage is far less likely. Another thing to keep in mind is when we're talking about a dog's mental health, dogs can no longer be shamed for showing their lipstick, as it were. So many dog owners are a bit particular about when their dogs show their penises, but now that the penis will be always exposed, this means that dogs can no longer be shamed for it, and they no longer will get yelled at for things that are beyond their control. And I think that this is probably a good thing for a dog's mental health and development. Another thing that would help with a dog is that they have knotty penises. And a lot of that is because they're compressed in the sheath. So if you remove the sheath when they're puppies, that gives them a chance to smooth out their penis, and this will then provide them with easier and less painful sexual experiences. So when dogs are breeding, they will no longer have the knots on their penis that will hold them back. And so this will create a much better experience for them. And especially if you're a breeder, this is important because this makes it much more likely that they will be able to sire a litter of puppies. And now I will provide theological proof that circumcising a dog will allow it to share in the covenant with its master. This is much like how when the Europeans took slaves from Africa, they converted them to Christianity, and those slaves were saved. If we go back all the way to Genesis 1:27 and 1:28, this is the famous "Be fruitful and multiply" passage, and God created man in his own image and then told him to be fruitful and multiply. And if dogs indeed are man's best friend, they should act as man does and be fruitful and multiply. They can only do that if they have not been neutered. But now let's get to circumcision itself, which is a slightly more complex case, but I think an even clearer case. So our first proof comes to us from Jeremiah 4:4. Circumcise yourselves to the Lord, and take away the foreskins of your heart, ye men of Judah and inhabitants of Jerusalem, lest my fury come forth like fire, and burn that none can quench it, because of the evil of your doings. So the point here is that to take away the foreskin of one's heart, to be in covenant with God, you must remove the foreskin of your penis. This is something that leaves an indelible mark and shows your allegiance. And it also, of course, demonstrates your allegiance to God every time that you are with your wife. Another passage from the New Testament this time is from Luke 2:21. And when 8 days were accomplished for the circumcising of the child, his name was called Jesus, which was so named of the angel before he was conceived in the womb. The point of this is that even Jesus himself was circumcised. And so to be truly Christ-like, one has to share in circumcision. So dogs are a little bit harder to save in many ways because they can't quite take as much responsibility for some of their sins, but by being circumcised, it does show a level of humility and submission, and that might very much improve their case with God if they're behaving in a Christ-like manner by having a circumcised penis. And of course, these passages come to us from the authoritative King James Version of the Bible rather than one of these more newfangled and less accurate translations. So if you have any questions about the circumcision of dogs, please let me know, and I will be happy to answer your concerns. Until next time, I'm Remarkable Republican, bringing you the truth with a truth-flavored bias. Signing out.